Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Carleton's fourth annual Breakthrough Breakfast, hosted by the Faculty of Engineering and Design. Thank you for being with us to celebrate International Women's Day. My name is Erin Louis Hing, and it's my pleasure to act as host for this morning's event. I'm a second-year undergraduate student in Carleton's Biomedical and Electrical Engineering program and the Vice President of Communications for the Engineering Student Societies Council of Ontario. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we would like to acknowledge the Algonquin Nation whose traditional and unceded territory Carleton University is located upon. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Together, please consider how we are and can each, in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. This morning, we'll have the opportunity to hear from two outstanding women researchers, followed by a discussion on women in STEM moderated by the faculty's Associate Dean Research. Carleton and the Faculty of Engineering and Design are committed to initiatives which celebrate diversity and inclusion. Through virtual ventures, we offer specialized programming for young women and girls aimed at challenging their perceptions about STEM fields. We also offer recruitment events for prospective women students, and we recently launched the Women in Engineering and Information Technology program, which provides current women students with the tools and knowledge to successfully transition into the workplace. I would like to thank all of our partners, alumni, industry, government, and the broader community who have joined us to inspire and advance girls and women in STEM through their support of these various programs. Before we get underway, I'd like to quickly remind everyone to type in any questions you have for our speakers using the Q&A box. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to our first presenter, Anastasia Garib. Anastasia is a PhD candidate in Carleton's Sensor Systems and Internet of Things lab, where her research is focused on minimizing security risks and increasing user satisfaction with respect to data through machine learning. Welcome, Anastasia.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me today. The Internet of Things is changing our lives, where security is one of the main concerns. So my presentation is about meeting user security needs in the Internet of Things era. And I'll start with what is IoT, why security is important, gradually moving to the solutions and the things that I do at the Internet of Things lab. Imagine the future, connected autonomous vehicles talking to one another to avoid collisions and manage traffic, but also with smart buildings for 3D infrastructure modeling. When we're talking about the Internet of Things, we're referring to very smart, but at the same time complex networks, which bring great opportunities to business on the market. As illustrated in this slide, the IoT applications range from e-health and smart grids to intelligent transportations and smart cities. And instead of separating these vertical silos, IoT interconnects them together into a horizontal system, where IoT devices are the main building blocks. And these devices are heterogeneous. They may be so different, as simple as smart temperature sensors, or as complex as intelligent medical robots. To interconnect these heterogeneous devices, interoperability is essential, such that they can coexist and provide various services to users. And of course, we talk about interconnecting billions of IoT devices together. And this means that IoT networks should also be scalable. However, with all these potentials of the IoT, there still are some challenges, and security is one of them. Let's have a look why. So I've mentioned that IoT devices are heterogeneous, they support different communication technologies, have different energy resources and computational capabilities, and generate different data. And when these devices come from manufacturers, they may have some security features within them if the device resources allow that. But how do we define a secure device? Well, theoretically, it is a device that is connected to nothing and not used at all. And many times we see some unreasonable recommendations coming from device manufacturers to isolate these devices or put them on their own isolated physical network. Well, this is not an option for the IoT. And before we move forward, I'd like to ask you a question. Have you ever been approached by someone proposing smart home packages, or maybe gifted a smart home appliance or a smartwatch? Did you ask the hydro company how your data is communicated, processed, and shared? If you answered yes to any of these questions, let me know if you had any data security concerns by participating in a poll that will appear on your screen. Thanks for sharing your answers. Now let's move forward. The main problem here is that securing IoT devices by themselves cannot guarantee the overall IoT system security. The surrounding environment and interconnections with other IoT legacy devices, network, and cloud impact the overall IoT system. This increases the attack surface and the system becomes prone to various security vulnerabilities. From there, data security concerns arise. Many IoT devices are unattended. As data is passed from one IoT device to another, it can be easily intercepted and compromised. This leads to the problem of user security satisfaction, which is the extent to which user security needs are fulfilled. And then from the poll results, many of us have questioned the security of our data. And user security needs are very individual. Each user may have their own balance when it comes to accepting specific risks versus getting the benefits of the IoT product. For example, let's say we have a smart fridge. Some users may not worry about the fact that the data of what they add on breakfast gets compromised, while others may care about this and sometimes even choose to avoid a specific IoT product because of this issue. And the question is how to deal with the security of IoT systems and user security satisfaction needs. In my work, I don't build new security mechanisms for IoT devices or network security protocols, but I look at this problem from the IoT system management perspective. Very often, security comes as an add-on, an afterthought, not incorporated into the design of the algorithms used. It further comes as one-size-fits-all in security, regardless of the user's needs or the context. And I find solutions to these problems through managing security on the system level and security building by design. Combining these two as centralized entities that is smart enough to monitor and manage the underlying system can be considered on the system level. And such centralized entities are called horizontal IoT platforms. Let's have a brief look at them. The two main components of a horizontal IoT platform are a common service layer and a security management layer. And both layers consist of several modular blocks, which include, for example, device management for the service layer and security policies for the security management layer. Additional blocks can be added to both layers like puzzles, making it easy to reconfigure IT systems management and create services with security building by design. Horizontal IT platforms are enabled through standardization, and as part of the project that I'm currently working on, I investigate different horizontal IT platform standards, their reference implementations, and of course, security management features and policies. And there are multiple standards for horizontal IT platforms and their reference implementations. For example, the OM2M platform, which is compliant with the most mature standard for horizontal IT platforms, 1M2M, or the IoTivity platform, compliant with Open Connectivity Foundation standard specifications. And even given the benefits of horizontal IoT platforms, in practice, there is always some level of security risk. And the task is to minimize the risk while considering the quality of service that IoT services offer. And although security standard specifications provide some guidelines for securing IoT systems, these guidelines are still basic. And generally, there is lack of works that consider IoT systems performance subject to varying user security needs. So in my PhD work, I focus on this type of algorithms. I manage IoT systems to maximize the quality of service subject to minimal data security risk for enhanced user security satisfaction. In this slide, you can see an example of an IoT network in the context of smart cities. In the sensing edge layer, there is an intelligent edge node that monitors and manages the underlying IoT network with mobile IoT nodes. And each IoT node has its security level. The higher the security level, the more protection an IoT device provides. In the consumer layer, we can see mobile users that request data from the sensing edge layer with specific security preferences, also defined by the security levels. But the question is, what are the specific IoT devices they request data from? They request data from IoT cache nodes, which collect data from other IoT nodes and store it for a specific time interval called round. The intelligent edge node reselects IoT cache nodes every round to adapt to IoT systems changes and, of course, user security needs. And for this purpose, several heuristic algorithms and various optimization and graph-powered AI and machine learning techniques are used. On this slide, some user security satisfaction results are shown. My algorithm, Nesra, is in blue, and some existing algorithms, ESS SDA and LeachM, are in red and orange, respectively. The results show the percentage of times users receive data with high, medium, low, and minimum user security satisfaction. Bringing security by design, Nesra was able to always achieve high user security satisfaction. Meanwhile, it was able to save energy by 20 to 25% of times, and users were able to receive data on 30% of times faster than in cases of the existing algorithms. And hence, the quality of service has been improved while meeting user security needs. This concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to take a couple of questions as the time allows.
Thank you, Anastasia. At this time, we'd like to invite anyone from the audience to submit any questions you have for Anastasia related to her research using the Q&A box.
Okay, so there is a question here. What do security levels represent? Well, that's a great question. Security levels represents mechanisms supported by IoT devices. For example, following the recommendations of NIST and several other standards for horizontal IoT platforms in their standard specifications, I considered AES, which is the Advanced Encryption Standard, in my work. It is a block cipher used for encryption, and the reason for it being popular for IoT is the fact that it has the great balance between securing the data and, of course, being energy efficient compared to some other block ciphers, such as data encryption standard or triple data encryption standard. Okay, so there is one more question here. How do you define high security satisfaction? So it's also an amazing question, and high user security satisfaction means that the security level of the received data matches the security level of the request by the user. If it is lower by one level, this means that we have medium security satisfaction. By 2 levels or 3 levels, then low and very low correspondingly. And more details about this can be found in one of my recent papers, which is available as an early access at IEEE Explorer's website. And now I'd like to pass it over to Erin.
Thank you, everyone, for the excellent questions. And thank you once again, Anastasia, for sharing your research with us today. Our next speaker today is Shahrzad Kajavi, who is currently pursuing a PhD in electrical and computer engineering at Carleton. Her research focuses on using silicon photonics to decrease power consumption, reduce costs, and increase the efficiency of satellite communication and LiDAR systems for autonomous vehicles. Welcome, Shahrzad.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Erin. Thank you for the introduction. And a happy International Women's Day, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. So today I would like to talk about part of my research entitled Silicon Photonic Grating Antennas for Two-Dimensional Optical Phased Arrays. So I would like to start the story with a question. Have you ever wondered how an autonomous vehicle knows how to drive? So basically, any devices that need to do the navigation and see their environment must sense their surrounding area, which means that they need to detect the objects like pedestrians, cyclists, other vehicles, and even road conditions. Scientists have inspired it from nature. For example, considering a bat that sees its environment, the thing it's do is that it produces and sends waves to hit an object and then reflect it back the wave to bat's ears. So in this way, the bats can hear the object and basically sees that object. The same principle is happening here and applied. For example, in aviation, radar antennas launch pulses of radio or microwaves at planes to learn their locations by timing how long the beams take to bounce back. So a self-driving car has to detect the objects, collecting enough information about their size, shape, and their positions so that its control algorithm can plot the safest path. Currently, we have three sensing technologies for self-driving vehicles. They are camera sensors, radar sensors, and LiDAR sensors. Camera sensors provides a full view of the surrounding area, 360 degrees, but they have trouble in identifying objects in a very bad weather condition. And also they have difficulties in actually recognizing the low color contrast of the objects, which resulted in driving algorithm failure. Radar sensors that stand for radio detection and ranging, they identify objects during the bad weather condition, but they have difficulties in pedestrian recognition. Why? Because they use large beam size that cannot visualize fine details. And the last one is the LiDAR system. It is again provides us a full view of the surrounding area, 3D images of the detected objects. It has high reliability, and okay, sometimes it fails in bad weather conditions. We all have that advantages. Google, Uber, and Toyota companies chose LiDAR systems as their smart eyes for their self-driving cars. We also, in our project, chose to continue with LiDAR system. Here, I want to talk about how basically a LiDAR sensor works and what are the challenges. Assume that there is a moose on the road. As the car drives by, one LiDAR pulse scatters off the base of its antlers, while the next may travel to the tip of one antler before bouncing back. Measuring how much longer the second pulse takes to return provides data about the antler's shape. Just the same principle that radars do. With a lot of short pulses, a LiDAR system quickly renders a detailed profile of that moose. The current LiDAR-based self-driving cars have relied on complex and massive rotating parts that scan from the vehicle's rooftop. Here, with integrated photonics, antennas and detectors are being shrunk to less than 1/10 of a millimeter and packed into tiny chips that will one day fit inside the car's light. To eliminate these mechanical moving parts that causes an undesirably high power consumption, there is a technique, optical phase array technique, that control and steer light by controlling the phase of radiated light from each antenna. Here is a schematic of a phased array system that includes several parts: input waveguides, phase shifters, and radiating elements that we define it as antennas. When the light via source injected to the system, it goes along these phase shifters to be phase shifted until the light reaches these radiating elements, then eventually diffracted upward into the free space. This is the area that my research comes in. So here, this one is one of our publications that is based on a design of a compact and highly efficient broadband antenna on silicon platform. This is our design and our antenna design, and this is the fabricated one. And as you can see, these colors are representing the light that diffracts upward. So the efficiency is almost 90% with a very, very compact footprint of this antenna, 7.6 in 4.5 micrometers. So if you consider a human hair strand that it is 70 microns. This device is 10 times smaller than a human hair strand. Thank you so much. And I would be happy to hear some of your questions.
Thank you, Sharzad. Once again, we'd like to invite our audience to ask any questions related to Sharzad's presentation.
Oh, there is a question, curious how weather impacts it. So basically, it can, in a bad weather condition, it can be an obstacle like, I don't know, dust or fog. It can blur that it wants to scan everything. And that's why maybe it affects the LiDAR performance. What is LiDAR's sensing range? So current LiDARs can have a broad board of 100 meters or even 300 meters. And their sizes are in the size of a laptop, 12 inches.
Awesome. Thank you to everyone for all your questions. And thank you, Sharzad, for speaking about your research with us. We'd now like to change gears as we shift from the research component of this morning's event to our moderated discussion on women in STEM, led by the Faculty of Engineering and Design's Associate Dean Research, Professor Audrey Gerard. Dr. Gerard is an associate professor in the School of Information Technology and became the faculty's first women associate dean this past January. She leads the Creative Interactions Lab, a multidisciplinary research team in human-computer interaction that considers how people use tangible devices and wearable technologies, understands their applications with a focus on accessibility. I'm pleased to be taking part in today's conversation with Dr. Gerard, alongside our presenters Anastasia and Sharzad, which will begin with a guided discussion and be followed by an open Q&A with our audience. I'd now like to hand things over to Dr. Gerard.
Thank you, Erin, for the introduction, and thank you to the Faculty of Engineering and Design for hosting today's event in celebration of International Women's Day and inviting me to lead today's discussion on women in STEM. I'm delighted to be joined by Erin and Sharzad and Anastasia for this morning's conversation, which will be centered upon insights for industry. So examining the importance of support networks and mentoring for women pursuing STEM careers and the challenges women face as they enter STEM job markets, how the organization's culture can have a profound significance for women in their career, in their plans for their career path, and more. So there'll be an opportunity for an audience Q&A following the guided portion of today's discussion. So feel free to type any questions that come to mind in the Q&A box as we go, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. So I have a few questions for our audience. My first one for our panel, I mean. So what are the biggest challenges facing women as they enter STEM jobs in the market today? Shazad, would you like to start?
Yeah, of course. So that's a really good question. STEM needs a diverse workforce to solve the complex problems. And women also need STEM to get much deserved seat at the table, you know, and to enjoy the social and economic benefits of working in STEM professions. But there are some challenges that women are facing. One of them is that representation of women decreases as they go up in the career ladder. So they call it leaky pipeline, and this is true. And the reason behind this, I'm not sure about this, but I think the sexism deeply rooted in a STEM culture. The other one is that for the same job positions, men and women have different wage rate. And for the same job, women have lower salaries, but still, I don't know why. The other one is that men trained in STEM fields choose better paid jobs, but women just are filling up the vacancies. And the other one that I faced was that gender imbalance, which results from gender bias due to maybe socialization or school cultures, leading to have a biased attitudes regarding women's abilities and talents. And also, if you see in some companies, they are invisible, or they are not assigned to a high-level job like CEO or manager positions. And yeah, this is my input for this.
Great. You touched on a lot of really interesting and important points. Erin, Anastasia, anything to add?
For sure. I can definitely agree with what Sharzad said about biases. I completely think that a big challenge that also faces women in STEM is a lot of assumptions made about women coming into the field, as well as doubts because that people might make because we are women. They might think there's a lack of assertive skills or lack of negotiating skills, and or make assumptions about interests and stereotypes that there are around women entering the workforce. But I think it's really necessary that men and women in the workforce are, and especially leaders, are open to thinking and realizing that women have just as much to offer as men, and that there's a broad range of interest and skill levels from all sorts of different pathways that women come into the workforce with. It's not fair to generalize and say, oh, women, let's put them in the design field over here. No, be open and give women those opportunities and options that men also have.
Well put. So let's get into sort of how can that be done a little bit more concretely. So how does an employer's culture surrounding women in STEM impact your decision-making when considering a position? So some of you have done internships or have been in the workforce or will be soon. So how can industry demonstrate their commitments to prioritizing diverse, inclusive, and respectful environments? Erin?
For sure. I can definitely acknowledge that as a second year, I only have so much experience compared to probably Sharzad and Anastasia. But from what I've learned so far and heard of other experiences as well, I think a huge thing would be consistency. I think a lot of organizations take the time to look into making more of that diversity and inclusion and showing women that we want to celebrate your skills and achievements, and we want you a part of our team, but be consistent with that. Don't do it once and then forget to keep that going, but continue to encourage women coming into your workforce, coming into your company, as well as encouraging men and women to improve, like Sharzad was speaking on, climbing up that ladder. Give women those opportunities as well. And if you're a leader and you can suggest a position opening to someone, don't only go to men qualified for it, but go to those women who are also really passionate and really qualified for those positions as well. As I previously mentioned as well, avoid those stereotypes, be open to offering all sorts of opportunities to women. Don't try and make decisions for them in advance on what they might be interested in. Present everything you can to them. And lastly, I would say making a safe space for women, letting them have that collaboration with any teams, not secluding them to maybe where a lot of the other women are in the company, opening them up to all of the teams that you can, and just being there and making sure that maybe also having an opportunity for women to collaborate together, be that safe space for each other, and then go out and make those knowledge and connections together, and keep appreciating everybody's hard work in the team. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Great. Shazad, Anastasia, something to add?
Yes, sure. I guess that support also comes from the team members. So from the actual team that you're working in is very important. Many of the times we see that companies are very welcoming, and recruiters as well, the leaders, the managers, so people that you're working with, but it's also important that your teammates are also supportive.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. And to kind of loop that to some of what Erin said, male allyship is also really important too. It's not just women that need to help women and support them. It's a broader it's a broader conversation, and a lot of small things of language too, and how people are referred to. It shouldn't be females, it should be women, for example. Shazad, is anything to add on this question in particular?
Yeah, everything you covered, exactly. I agree with all of you. And yeah, the thing is that if I consider a place that I want to have my future job in there, I usually see how many women have their high class jobs and how they respect women, and actually they make it invisible, make it visible for women and to get these high level jobs, and just value their roles, not just by saying that, yeah, we respect women, we have women in our company, but yeah, they mean it actually.
Excellently put. So support for role models has been proven to be an essential factor for encouraging young women to pursue studies in career and STEM. And so how can a continued focus on support networks, mentorship, allyship within industry and academia impact the career paths of women in STEM? Anastasia?
So it depends on the situation and the type of support that a woman is provided with. If there is a big event where women are invited to apply for graduate studies, for a specific job, or even a competitive position in a company, what is the percentage of women that will do that? Yes, these events are very important, but let's say you see a woman with great potentials and amazing skills. Tell her that whether you are simply a colleague, a team member, a supervisor, or a team leader, these little personalized chunks of support and appreciation work so well. Nowadays, there are so many opportunities where a woman can put herself in the environment where she can practice her leadership skills, request support, mentorship, and basically learn. But if these small but sincere outreach conversations happen, one-to-one conversations from the outside, sometimes when she doesn't even expect, these can change her vision completely. You can flip her career path 180 degrees, and she must decide to drastically change her plans in her life. And I talk this even from my specific experience that I had. The graduate studies that I studied, this was because of a male alias that I had once, and who basically pushed me towards it and opened my eyes on it. And similar things, they continue happening with me even today.
Excellent, excellent answer. Shazad, Erin, anything to add?
Absolutely. Quite genuinely, the way I see it is a big part of being a woman in STEM is wanting that sense of belonging, especially with such a male populated field at the moment, or it's been that way for so long. Seeing mentors and other women succeeding in it solidifies that belonging. It's a reminder that it is possible, and it changes from less of a question of can I do it to a goal of I'm going to do it. And having a mentor and seeing a mentor is much easier to hear from somebody recommendations and how to deal with challenges, because that's much easier than starting from scratch and trying to figure it out alone. Whereas when you have somebody who can, even in the smallest way, help you through the journey, it just makes it that much less intimidating to go through the path and wanting to get where you have your goals set. Yeah.
If I can add to that, I think it's been proven that when women look at a job description, they need to meet all the requirements before they apply, as opposed to men. If they meet, good enough, like half of them or something, then they'll apply, and then maybe they get the job because they've applied more. And so these types of mentorship and networks can also help support women in considering more job applications and explaining the back end sort of unspoken information of like, no, you have like 7 out of 10 here, or you're like almost there, just apply. At worst, they won't take you because there's a candidate that has 10 out of 10. But what if you are stronger than people who apply that have 5 of the 10 items that are on this list? And so sometimes you need that boost from colleagues, from somebody a little bit more senior to say, look, this I think sounds something like a really good opportunity for you. Just do it. Go for it, even though you may not feel perfect for it, but it's so important. And that comes from classmates and colleagues and people at your level or at different levels. And that's really helpful to know, and to do for others as well. So think of your own more junior colleagues that might need that little boost, and just having those conversations sometimes. So I'll ask another question. Why do you think it's important for industry to be part of the conversation early on? How can initiative focus on supporting young women and girls in STEM help strengthen the pipeline of women entering these fields for the sustainable future? So why should industry be part of that and not just be the education system, for example?
I think it speaks back to what I had mentioned on consistency earlier. Having industry and partners for programs such as the Women in Engineering and Information Technology, and even for events like this, is a reminder of what companies are really dedicated to that mission or that statement of wanting to be a part of the progress of making sure that women feel like they are belonging, and that they can come and be a part of the team. When they're a part of the talk, when they're a part of the conversation, it's just, I guess, proof, for lack of a better word, that they're sincere about it. They truly do want to give women the resources and give them the advice and make them feel like they have what they need to succeed. Whereas if they wait and sit back and just be the education, it's, yes, you're talking, but are you making the action towards what you're talking about? Yeah.
Anastasia, Shazad, something to add to this?
It also shows that the environment is accepting. So this is basically, I guess, one of the points that I could mention, but I guess that Erin covered it completely for me.
Well, excellent. So thank you to the three of you, Erin, Shazad, and Anastasia, for this excellent round of discussion. So at this time, I'd like to open up the conversation and invite questions from the audience. And we've had a few submitted already, so I will share some of those, but feel free to submit a few more. So recently, I heard that more and more women in academia, particularly in STEM, are taking on leadership roles like deans, associate deans, that traditionally have been held by men. Part of me wonders about this shift in leadership roles have become administrative burdens. So how do you go about really creating equity in the system? So perhaps I can start with answering that one, given that I'm in such a new role like this. And as much as I hate to have been the first women in this role in our faculty of engineering and design, I think it's something that's really important to point out, because it is something that changes day-to-day roles and positions, and it has shifted my own workload in the last 2 months, for sure. But I think I see it personally as being able to have a broader impact. So having sort of perhaps share it, like being a role model for others, but also I think that having diversity in those roles mean bringing different perspectives and supporting people differently. Perhaps if people see themselves in those in such roles, then it means that they might be more approachable. And then me in this role will just approach things in a different way than my predecessor. And it's not because it is better or worse. It's just kind of just seeing a different lens on things. And so from me in particular, I want to support my early career researchers colleagues. And so that's something that is that I find quite important and I want to do. And so I've decided that's part of my focus. And so having the support from upper administration to shift my responsibilities so I don't do that job on top of every other job, but I've sort of to have some items taken away from my plate so I can concentrate on that really makes a huge difference, because all of these initiatives and administrative work just can't be an addition to everything. And so it's really important to have senior leadership that will recognize that and shift your priorities for it. Scrolling through the list of questions. Have any of you attended the Candid Conversations and Industry Talks that our Women in Engineering and IT program, partnership program have done, and kind of what have been your impressions of that? I see Erin had nodded.
Yeah, I recently I believe it was December or November, attended one with Lockheed Martin, and it was really fruitful. And as we have been mentioning throughout this entire discussion, the woman who was doing the talk, she did such a good job at explaining her achievements, but also elaborating on the challenges that she's faced. And she gave such genuine, honest tips about how she's handled things that it didn't put a sense of intimidation into myself, and I don't think any of the other attendees, but it gave a sense of, I guess, hope. And it was little tips. And as you have mentioned earlier, Dr. Gerard, about she did also mention going for it and applying to a position, even if you don't hit all that criteria. And little things like that are things that I myself, as a young person going into these jobs, for a few of these jobs for the first time into the field, hearing stuff like that is really, really helpful advice, because those are things that I would look at and say, oh, I don't have all those qualifications, but hearing these more senior women in the roles encouraging me, that's exactly what I needed. And so I think these industry talks and candid talks are so helpful, and I definitely plan on attending more of them.
That's great to hear. So another question, do you have any insights on how to approach the small but often vocal minority who complain that support programs for women and visible minorities are unfair, or that a young white man can't get anywhere these days? So it's an emotional position that sadly seems to be on the increase again. Have you heard similar comments? Any thoughts on how that can be approached?
I have heard some complaints from some of my colleagues, but at the same time, I do really understand that sometimes we do need to focus on our skills, on our own education, on bettering ourselves, no matter who you are, whether you are a woman or you're a man. As long as you have all the required skills for a specific job or a specific position to get promoted, you will get it. So this is one of the most important things that you actually need to focus on. You need to focus on bettering yourself. And this comes not only from the perspective of being a woman or a man, it comes generally being as a person, as a professional. You always need to stay professional, probably complain less, but try to change your life by educating yourself, bettering yourself, and putting yourself in the environments that are challenging, that will help you to acquire some very useful skills.
Well put, Shahzad. Erin, anything to add?
Nope, I think Anastasia hit that on the nail, and I completely agree that it really comes down to us as individuals too, as recognizing that work hard, set those goals, and reach out to support when you need it. And I think that anybody's capable of hitting those goals that they want, and you'll end up where you're supposed to end up at the end of the day. But overall, I think there's more and more support out there for everybody. And as long as we try and um, make it as accessible to the different minorities and different groups that need it, but everyone in general, as long as we can provide those little pieces of support as much as we can, then I think everybody has a good chance and should just keep working towards it.
Somebody posted in the chat, diversity helps everyone, even young, tall, white males. And that is certainly true too, even though they might not always recognize it so on that. So there was a question in the chat. What is the percentage of men and women population in the engineering school at the moment? I'm a hiring manager and haven't seen many women's resumes coming through. So as of fall 2021, women undergraduate and graduate students represent 22.5% of nearly 6,400 engineering and IT students within the Faculty of Engineering and Design. So these numbers are increasing, and hopefully you see more resumes within your organization. So another question, so how many different companies in industry have you worked for, and which one gave you best and worst experience? And so I'm going to switch that question a little bit more. You don't have to name names if you don't want to, but can you share a specific example of a work situation, and work can be expanded in a broad sense, that was a positive experience for you, and you can keep it general and not name people directly or our organization directly, but sort of, can you share kind of a really good example or an example that was not so good that happened to you, if you'd like?
So I can't say that I haven't worked yet in the company, but I'm in a collaboration with industry, not industry, but the research council. So they are very thoughtful, and of course, the percentages of women is less than men actually in the engineering, the electronics engineering that I'm in. But their behavior, their attitude is so positive on me, and I actually didn't feel any pressure on me because I'm a female or whatever. And I think, and I'm in collaborating with them for 3 years. So I have a really good experience working with them.
That's great.
Recently, I've had experience where working with a company for a summer, and then when it was time for me to leave, going back to this during the school year in the fall, my leader was very open and happy to express to me to come back, but also suggest that if need be, and if I felt as though the role I was in, if there might be more that might interest me and other ventures and pathways that I might want to try, she made it very open to me that she would support me in finding anything that I might think would work better or something that I just want to try out. And support like that was a really positive experience and made me feel as though I wasn't limited to what I had already done, and that there was space for me to do even more learning. And so that was a great experience.
Wonderful, thank you. So another question that relates to negative comments that one might hear. So as a female, once you've made it to a certain level of success, achievement, degree, you hear comments like you were given that because you're a woman, or comments that does not reflect your credential and expertise, but your gender, being a visible minority. How do you deal with that?
I pretend I didn't hear that. I just simply pretend because you won't change the minds of other people, but at the same time, you know that you were actually working, you were doing the job, you worked so hard that you reached to that level. It's not because of the fact that you were representing a minority at one point, but it was because of the fact that you were working really hard. And once again, it gets back to the main idea of the fact that usually people who say this, they are also complaining about these programs. Usually they're the same people. So I guess it's just that if someone complains about their own situation, they don't have to look at someone else, but look at themselves and look at what they are currently doing, what's happening with their lives, what's happening with their professional career paths, and probably try to change something, try to better themselves once again.
That's a very good answer. I have certainly ignored a few comments that I've heard, and it's not necessarily easy, but at least in that moment, it is a good solution. Yes, or being invited to an event, a committee, and because there's some requirements for diversity in hiring committees, for example, there's a requirement that you have 1 man and 1 woman join the committee minimally, and etc. But there are ways to invite that person. Yes, maybe you need kind of to meet that requirement, but that person will have, like, they need to be invited because they will have an interesting contribution. And even if it's sort of slightly off of their main, very precise expertise, they can sort of help assess people in the hiring committee from a different angle, and that can be very beneficial. And so I hope none of you get invited to an email and say, well, we don't need your specific expertise, but we essentially need diversity on the email, because that's an unacceptable way. And if you do, then these types of comments should be passed on to higher up so that they don't happen again if it's something that's within your organization. Okay, one last question from the audience that well, actually there's 2 questions that I like, but I'll pick the last one that was added. What obstructions arrived to you as an undergraduate? So within sort of your schooling, and that can apply to your grad studies, but within the university, did you experience negative conversations, situations, and sort of how did you deal with them?
Surprisingly, I've never had any obstacles or any conversations like this during my undergraduate degrees, probably because still I wasn't that shining so much. I wasn't involved in so many things that I'm doing now. I wasn't getting awards that I do now. So nobody was paying that much attention on me. I didn't hear anything like this. I guess the biggest problem for me during my undergrad was that I didn't know what to do after this. And once again, then during the training, there was that colleague of mine that really showed me the way, that opened my eyes on the things that the graduate studies would be the way that would work for me very well. And I'm so thankful to him even till now. And I really want to end up the conversations that we're having today with a very positive point that there are still so many good people, so many good mentors and allyshs that really reach out to you and talk to you. They try to help you to better you. And we really should be thankful to them, especially during this International Women's Week.
Well, I'm glad you had a positive experience in your undergrad. And I think sort of who your mentors are and who your colleagues are in the sort of your immediate vicinity makes such a huge difference. Erin, how has your experience been so far?
I must agree. Although I'm only in 2nd year, I've been incredibly fortunate. Carleton's been so good to me, and I've met only but great people around me. I've had really great colleagues in my classes. I've reached out to professors who have also been so kind to me. And so, yeah, I've had a really positive experience. And if there's one thing I'd say may have been intimidating is just, again, the ratio between the amount of women students and men. But again, the people who I've encountered, the men and women, have all been kind. And so we're still working together as groups. And so far, I felt really good. And I'm really fortunate for that.
Excellent. And Shazad, one last word?
Yeah, sure. Just like Erin and Anastasia that had a great experience. Me also, I got my degree, my bachelor degree, undergrad degree back home. And it was full of supportive and positive attitudes toward me. I got everything that I wanted, but just from some of my classmates, I got this feeling, but they told me actually that you are getting a good grade because from the professor because you're a girl, and some kind of these conversations, and I just ignored them, and they can see now where I am now. So it is not because I'm a girl, and it is because of my hard work and other stuff.
That is absolutely true, and it's really great to hear about your research earlier, and well, both of you, and see kind of your progression, because you are, all three of you, quite impressive to participate in an event like today as well. So I really thank you wholeheartedly with sharing your experience today, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you. All right, so it looks as though that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for all the outstanding questions, and to Dr. Gerard for guiding today's important dialogue. On behalf of the Faculty of Engineering and Design, I'd like to extend a final thank you to Anastasia and Shahzad for sharing their research with us today, and to all of our speakers for contributing to this morning's conversation. Once again, thank you to everyone for attending today. I hope you'll all enjoy the rest of your morning, and happy early International Women's Day. Thank you.